I never expected to find it. The document that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family. I was just helping Dad with his laptop when I saw the file labeled Final Will and Testament. Curiosity got the better of me. One click, and my world imploded. They were leaving everything to my cousin Jason. Everything. The house I grew up in. Their savings. Even the family heirlooms that had been promised to me since childhood. The words burned into my retinas. To our nephew Jason, who has been more a son to us than we could have hoped for. Our real son in every way that matters. I felt physically sick. For 3 years I had been paying their mortgage, their bills, their everything, because they claimed they were struggling financially. And all this time they were planning to leave it all to Jason. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. I made a decision right then. No confrontation. No drama. I simply stopped paying their bills. My name is Robbie Anderson. I'm 32 years old and worked my way up to becoming a senior financial advisor at one of Pennsylvania's most prestigious firms. The irony isn't lost on me that I advise others on financial security while being financially exploited by my own parents. Growing up in Westbrook, a quiet middle-class neighborhood in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, my childhood seemed normal enough on the surface. Mom worked as a high school English teacher, and Dad was a sales manager at an office supply company. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. Jason entered our lives when I was 8. His parents, my mom's sister Amanda and her husband, went through a nasty divorce. My aunt moved across the country to California for a fresh start, leaving 11-year-old Jason to spend most weekends and holidays with us, since his dad worked irregular hours as an emergency room doctor. At first, I was excited to have someone around who was like a big brother, but subtle things started happening that, even as a child, I couldn't miss. When my birthday came, I got practical gifts, clothes, school supplies, occasionally a book I wanted. When Jason's birthday rolled around, there were elaborate celebrations, expensive electronics, and special trips. Once, they took him to Disney World, something I had begged for but was told we couldn't afford. Jason needs extra attention, Mom would say whenever I pointed out the disparity. His parents divorced, and he's going through a difficult time. That difficult time somehow stretched into years and then decades. Even when we were adults, the pattern continued. My accomplishments were acknowledged with brief congratulations, while Jason's smallest achievements warranted family celebrations. After college, I threw myself into building my career. I worked 12-hour days, took weekend courses, and networked relentlessly. By 27, I had made enough to buy my own condo and was bringing in a 6-figure salary. I was proud of what I had accomplished through my own determination and hard work. Then came the call from my father 3 years ago. They were falling behind on their mortgage. The economy had hit them hard. Mom's school was cutting back hours. Dad's commission structure had changed. The story was convincing, filled with specific details about rising healthcare costs and property taxes. "We hate to ask," Dad said, his voice heavy with what I now realize was manufactured shame, "but we might lose the house, just until we get back on our feet." Without hesitation, I set up automatic transfers for their mortgage payment and an extra $1,000 monthly for utilities and groceries. I even covered their property taxes and insurance. All told, I was sending them over $3,000 every month, money I had planned to invest in my own future. Last Thanksgiving, I overheard a conversation that should have been my first real warning. Dad and Jason were in the garage, speaking in hushed tones they didn't think would carry. "The down payment for the house is the big hurdle," Jason said. "Once I have that, the monthly payments shouldn't be a problem with the new business taking off." Dad's response chilled me. "Don't worry about the down payment. We've been putting aside some money each month. By next summer, we should have enough to help you get that place you've been eyeing." I stood frozen, the pie I was bringing out to serve still in my hands. Putting aside money? While I was covering all their essential expenses? Something didn't add up, but I pushed the thought away. Surely there was an explanation. The truth hit me like a thunderbolt when I discovered that Jason had opened not one, but 3 businesses in the past 2 years. A sports memorabilia shop, a pressure washing service, and most recently, a food truck. All had failed spectacularly, yet he always seemed to have capital for the next venture. My parents weren't struggling financially at all. They were taking my money I worked hard for, and funneling it straight to Jason. They were funding his repeated failures and lavish lifestyle while letting me believe they might end up homeless without my help. As this realization sank in, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The betrayal wasn't just about money. It was about lies. About being used by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. The discovery of the will was just the beginning. Once my eyes were opened, I couldn't stop seeing the patterns that had been there all along. I'm a financial advisor. Investigation is second nature to me. It took just 3 days to uncover the full extent of their deception. First, I called their mortgage company directly, claiming I needed documentation for tax purposes since I was making their payments. The customer service representative was helpful, pulling up their account immediately. "It looks like the mortgage was refinanced 2 years ago," she said cheerfully. The monthly payment was reduced significantly. My stomach dropped. 2 years ago? After I had already been paying the original, higher amount for a full year, I asked for the new payment amount. It was nearly $800 less than what I had been sending them monthly. "Can you tell me what the extra payments have been applied to?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "It looks like the additional funds were directed to principal reduction as requested," she replied. "The loan is actually ahead of schedule now. They could skip payments for almost a year without penalty." They had never told me about the refinance. They had pocketed the difference every month while letting me believe they were barely making ends meet. Next, I used my lunch break to drive past Jason's new place, a newly constructed home in one of the most desirable neighborhoods in Lancaster. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, with a 3-car garage on a corner lot. Even with my salary, I couldn't afford such luxury. The property had to be worth at least $700,000. I parked across the street and pulled up the county property records on my phone. The house had been purchased 6 months ago. The down payment would have been at least $140,000. Where did that money come from, when just months earlier, Jason's food truck business had folded? That weekend, I made an unannounced visit to my parents' house, claiming I was just in the neighborhood. Mom seemed flustered by my arrival but invited me in. While she made coffee, I asked to use the bathroom near my father's home office. Once alone, I quickly searched through his desk drawer, finding bank statements he had always kept meticulously organized. What I found confirmed everything. They had a savings account I never knew existed, with a balance of over $200,000. The statements showed regular deposits matching the extra I had been sending them beyond their actual mortgage needs. There were also large withdrawals coinciding with Jason's business startups and home purchase. But the financial betrayal wasn't what hurt the most. As I walked through their house that day, I noticed something that had been staring me in the face for years. The walls, shelves, and mantel were a shrine to Jason. Photos of him at various ages dominated every surface. His college graduation picture in a large, ornate frame. His high school football trophies proudly displayed. Even recent photos of him in front of his new house and with his arm around my parents. My presence in these displays was minimal. A small family photo from my high school graduation tucked on a side table. Nothing from my college graduation with honors. Nothing from when I won a prestigious industry award last year. It was as if my accomplishments weren't worthy of celebration or remembrance. In my parents' bedroom, I noticed a new addition. A large, professionally taken portrait of Jason standing between my parents, all 3 beaming. They looked like a perfect family unit, mother, father, and son. Where was I in this picture? Nowhere to be found. I felt like a ghost in my own family history, a footnote, an obligation they had fulfilled until I was old enough to be useful to them financially. All those years I had interpreted their emotional distance as just being not the hugging type or old-school parents who didn't believe in excessive praise. How wrong I had been. The final piece came when I was leaving and noticed Mom's phone on the kitchen counter. She had stepped outside to water the plants, giving me a moment alone. I shouldn't have looked, but something compelled me. I picked up her phone, which didn't have a lock screen. Mom had never been tech-savvy. The text messages between her and Dad were right there. I scrolled through their recent exchanges and found conversations about me, about Jason, about the will. Their words cut deeper than any knife could have. "Robbie has always been so independent, so self-sufficient," my mother had written. She's made her own way without needing us. Jason truly appreciates family. He's our rightful heir in spirit. My father's response. Agreed. Robbie has her career and her own life. She doesn't need our help or our assets. Jason will carry on our family legacy the way a son should. I set the phone down, my hand trembling. Their real son. That's how they saw him. Not as a nephew they had helped raise, but as the child they wished they'd had instead of me. I wasn't just financially supporting my parents. I was financially supporting a family that had emotionally excluded me long ago. As I drove home, tears blurred my vision. Years of memories replayed in my mind, now viewed through a new, painful lens. The soccer games my parents missed because they were attending Jason's baseball tournaments. The school awards ceremonies where I looked out into the audience and saw empty seats where they should have been. The countless times they had introduced Jason as like a son to us, while I stood silently beside them, my role in the family unacknowledged. That night, I canceled all the automatic payments. Every single one of them. The mortgage, the utilities, the extra spending money I sent. All of it. I wouldn't confront them, not yet. I wanted to see what would happen when the well suddenly ran dry. 3 weeks passed in excruciating silence. I went through the motions of my daily life, advising clients, attending meetings, having dinner with my boyfriend Troy, but inside I was in constant turmoil. Every night, I would stare at my phone, wondering if today would be the day they'd notice the money had stopped coming. I fluctuated between righteous anger and crushing self-doubt. Had I misinterpreted everything? Was I overreacting? Should I just confront them directly instead of this passive approach? Troy noticed the change in me. We'd been dating for 2 years, and he could read me like few others could. "Something's eating at you," he said one evening as we sat on my balcony watching the sunset. "You're not sleeping. You check your phone constantly. What's going on, Robbie?" I hadn't told anyone yet, too ashamed to admit I'd been played for a fool by my own parents. But Troy's genuine concern broke through my defenses, and everything came pouring out: the will, the financial deception, the years of emotional neglect in favor of Jason. Troy listened without interruption, his expression darkening as I revealed the full extent of the situation. When I finished, he took my hand. "You need to talk to someone professional about this," he said gently. "This isn't just about money. This is decades of emotional manipulation and exploitation." He was right. The next day, I called Dr. Sarah Brenner, a therapist specializing in family trauma. She fit me in that week, and over the course of 2 intensive sessions, she helped me understand what had been happening from a psychological perspective. "What you're describing has elements of what we call family scapegoating," she explained. In dysfunctional family systems, sometimes one child is unconsciously selected to bear the brunt of the family's emotional projection, while another becomes the golden child who can do no wrong. "But why me?" I asked. The question that had been haunting me for weeks. What did I do to deserve being cast aside in favor of someone who isn't even their child? Dr. Brenner leaned forward. "It likely has nothing to do with anything you did. Family dynamics like these often stem from the parents' own unresolved issues. Your independence and self-sufficiency might actually threaten them in some way. Meanwhile, Jason's apparent need for them reinforces their self-image as important, necessary people." It made a twisted kind of sense. The more I succeeded on my own, the more they seemed to pull away. The more Jason failed and needed their help, the closer they drew him into their circle. "What do I do now?" I asked. "Set boundaries," she replied firmly. "Clear, non-negotiable boundaries. And prepare yourself for the possibility that they may never acknowledge the harm they've caused you. Your healing can't be dependent on their recognition or apology." I left that session feeling both heavier and lighter, heavier with the confirmation that my family dynamic was indeed toxic, but lighter knowing I wasn't crazy for feeling betrayed. 4 weeks after I stopped the payments, it finally happened. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Transfer the money for the mortgage. It's 3 days late," the bank called. No greeting. No. "How are you?" No explanation for why they hadn't noticed for almost a month that I had stopped sending money. Just a demand. as if I were nothing more than their personal ATM. I stared at those cold words for a long time, feeling a strange sense of calm settle over me. This message confirmed everything. In their eyes, my value was purely transactional. After careful consideration, I typed my response. I think you should ask Jason. I saw the will. I hit send and immediately turned off my phone. I knew what would happen next, and I needed time to prepare myself emotionally. When I turned my phone back on 3 hours later, I had 37 missed calls, 22 from my mother, 15 from my father. There were also dozens of text messages, ranging from confused to angry to pleading. What will are you talking about? Call us immediately. You've misunderstood something. We need to talk about this in person. The mortgage payment is important, Robbie. Whatever else is going on, people need a place to live. That last one nearly made me throw my phone across the room. The emotional manipulation was so transparent now that I could see it clearly. They were trying to make me feel guilty for not supporting them, completely sidestepping the fact that they had been lying to me for years. I texted back a single line. I'm not available to talk right now. Then I blocked their numbers. I needed space to think, to plan my next move. This wasn't just about stopping financial support. This was about reclaiming my self-worth and establishing boundaries that should have been in place long ago. That night, Troy stayed over. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie when the doorbell rang. Then again. Then continuous ringing, followed by pounding on the door. Robbie, open this door right now. We know you're in there. My father's voice, angrier than I'd ever heard it. Troy looked at me, concerned. You don't have to talk to them if you're not ready, he said. I took a deep breath. No, it's time. But would you mind staying? I could use the support. He nodded, squeezing my hand as I walked to the door. I opened it to find not just my parents, but Jason as well, all three looking like they'd rushed over in a panic. This wasn't going to be a rational discussion. This was going to be an ambush. How dare you read private documents on your father's computer, my mother started before I could even speak. Her face was flushed, her normally perfectly styled hair disheveled. I stepped aside, allowing them to enter my condo but maintaining my composure. Please come in. I think we have a lot to discuss. They filed in, my father looking around disapprovingly, as if searching for signs that I was wastefully spending money that could have been going to them. Jason hung back, seeming uncomfortable, and avoiding eye contact with me. Troy stood up from the couch and introduced himself, offering handshakes that my parents reluctantly accepted and that Jason ignored completely. I appreciated Troy's presence more than words could say. Having a witness to this confrontation meant they couldn't gaslight me about what was said later. You had no right to go through my private files, my father continued, picking up where my mother had left off. And then to cut us off financially without warning? Do you know we almost missed our mortgage payment? Our credit could have been damaged. I let out a small, incredulous laugh. That's rich, Dad. You're worried about your credit score when I just discovered you've been lying to me for years? We never lied to you, my mother interjected quickly. We needed help, and you offered it. You told me you were struggling to make ends meet, I replied evenly. Yet somehow, you've managed to amass a savings account of over $200,000. You told me your mortgage was at risk, but you refinanced 2 years ago and have been pocketing the difference I've been sending. You've been funding Jason's failed businesses and his house down payment with my money. Jason shifted uncomfortably. Keep me out of this. This is between you and your parents. I turned to him, years of suppressed resentment bubbling to the surface. Is it Jason? Because the will I found puts you right in the middle of it. They're leaving everything to you, their real son. Those were the exact words. My mother's expression changed from anger to something more calculated. You're taking that out of context, Robbie. Jason has been like a son to us. That doesn't diminish your place in the family. Doesn't it? Then why am I not mentioned anywhere in the will? Why have you been secretly diverting my financial support to him? Why is your house a shrine to his accomplishments while mine are barely acknowledged? My father stepped forward, his tone condescending. You've always been difficult, Robbie. Always questioning, always challenging. Jason understands family loyalty and respect. Loyalty? I repeated, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Is it loyal to take advantage of your daughter? To exploit her financially while planning to leave everything to someone else? You don't need the inheritance, my mother said dismissively. You have your fancy career, your own place. Jason is family-oriented. He'll carry on our legacy. The implication was clear. I wasn't family-oriented enough. My success and independence were being used against me, twisted into justifications for their betrayal. And what exactly is your legacy? I asked. Teaching your child that her only value is financial? Showing her that no matter how hard she works or how much she gives, she'll never be enough? Jason finally spoke up. Look, I didn't ask to be put in their will. I didn't know about any of this. I leveled my gaze at him. Really, Jason? You didn't know they were helping you buy a $700,000 house? You didn't know they were funding your businesses? You expect me to believe that? He had the decency to look away, unable to maintain eye contact in the face of such obvious lies. The truth is, my father said, his voice taking on a strange, almost sorrowful tone, you never really fit, Robbie. From the time you were little, you were always so different, so independent. Jason needed us. You never seemed to. The words hit me like a physical blow. Never fit? In my own family? Because I was independent? Because I had worked hard and made something of myself without constantly needing their help? My mother nodded in agreement. We always felt more like observers in your life than parents. With Jason, we feel needed, appreciated, respected. I stood there, momentarily speechless. They were actually trying to justify their emotional abandonment by claiming I was too self-sufficient. That's when the front door opened. Troy had slipped out a few minutes earlier, and now he returned, putting his phone in his pocket with a significant look my way. I understood immediately what he had done. He had recorded the conversation legal in our state as long as one party consented. I think we've heard enough, Troy said quietly, coming to stand beside me. Robbie has supported you for years, and this is how you repay her loyalty, by claiming she doesn't fit in her own family? My mother looked at Troy with naked hostility. This is a family matter. You have no place in this conversation. Actually, he does, I said, finding my voice again. Troy is the family I've chosen, the family that values me for who I am, not what I can provide. I took a deep breath, centering myself before continuing. I think I need some time. I've heard enough tonight to know that this isn't a healthy relationship for any of us. I'd like you all to leave now. My father looked stunned. You're throwing us out? After everything we've done for you? I almost laughed at the absurdity. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Besides take my money under false pretenses and plan to leave everything you own to Jason? We raised you, my mother said indignantly. Fed you, clothed you, put a roof over your head. That's the bare minimum of parental responsibility, I replied. It's not something you get extra credit for, and it certainly doesn't entitle you to exploit me as an adult. Jason started toward the door, clearly wanting to escape the tension. I'm out of here. This is between you three. As they reluctantly moved toward the exit, my father turned back. This isn't over, Robbie. You can't just cut us off. We're your parents. I looked him directly in the eyes. Yes, I can. And until you're ready to acknowledge what you've done and make genuine amends, that's exactly what I'm doing. After they left, I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained. Troy sat beside me, putting his arm around my shoulders. You did good, he said softly. And I got everything on record, just like you asked. Every word. I leaned into him, grateful beyond measure for his support. Thank you. I have a feeling we're going to need that recording. This confrontation wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of what would likely be a long, painful process of establishing boundaries and reclaiming my self-worth. But, for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't overreacting. Their own words had confirmed everything I had suspected about my place in the family hierarchy. Now I needed to decide what to do with this knowledge, how to protect myself, while also fighting for what was rightfully mine, both emotionally and financially. In the week following the confrontation, I threw myself into research and planning. This wasn't just an emotional family rift. There were serious financial and potentially legal issues at stake. I needed to approach this strategically rather than reactively. My first step was consulting with Patricia Winters, a family law attorney specializing in elder law and inheritance disputes. I brought copies of all my financial records, every payment I had made to my parents over the past 3 years, totaling nearly $120,000. Patricia listened carefully to my story, taking detailed notes. When I finished, she looked up with a thoughtful expression. "There are several angles to consider here," she said. "First, regarding the will itself. Yes, your parents have the legal right to leave their assets to whomever they choose. Being their biological child doesn't automatically entitle you to an inheritance." My heart sank, but she wasn't finished. "However, the financial support you provided creates a different situation. If they misrepresented their financial circumstances to obtain money from you, which it appears they did, we could potentially make a case for fraudulent misrepresentation or unjust enrichment." "What would that mean practically?" I asked. "At minimum, you could sue for recovery of the funds provided under false pretenses. The text messages, bank records, and that recording your boyfriend made could be valuable evidence. But I should warn you, litigation against family members tends to permanently damage relationships. Are you prepared for that possibility?" I thought about it. The relationship was already severely damaged. Would pursuing legal action make it irreparable? "I don't want to sue them right now," I decided, "but I would like to prepare everything in case it becomes necessary. Can we document everything and have it ready?" Patricia nodded. "A wise approach. We'll prepare the case but hold off on filing anything. Sometimes the knowledge that legal action is possible is enough to bring people to the negotiation table." Over the next few days, I meticulously organized every financial record. Bank statements showing transfers to my parents. Text messages requesting money. The recording of our confrontation where they admitted they didn't actually need the financial help. I created a comprehensive timeline documenting the entirety of my financial support alongside Jason's business ventures and home purchase, clearly showing the connection. Meanwhile, my parents had launched a campaign of their own, aimed at damaging my reputation within our extended family. My phone filled with messages from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all expressing concern about my abandonment of my struggling parents. "How could you cut them off when they need you most?" my Aunt Linda wrote. "They gave you everything? And this is how you repay them?" Came a text from my Uncle Robert. It became clear that my parents were spinning a narrative in which they were the victims, and I was the ungrateful, selfish daughter who had abandoned them in their time of need. They had told everyone they were facing foreclosure because I had suddenly stopped helping them, conveniently omitting the fact that they had been lying to me for years and planning to disinherit me. Rather than engaging in a family-wide debate, I responded simply and consistently. "There's more to the situation than you've been told. I love my parents and want what's best for everyone, but I need to establish healthy boundaries." 2 weeks after the confrontation, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Jason's bank. Apparently, he had listed me as a reference for a loan application, and they were conducting a verification call. I was stunned. After everything that had happened, he was still trying to use our connection for his financial benefit. I declined to provide a reference and immediately called my parents' number, which I had unblocked for practical reasons. My father answered, sounding stressed. "What is it, Robbie? We're in the middle of something." "Dad, did you know Jason just applied for another loan and used me as a reference without asking?" His hesitation told me everything. He's having some temporary cash flow issues with the new business. Nothing serious. New business? He's starting another one after 3 failures? Everyone has setbacks. At least he's trying to build something, not just working for someone else. The dismissal of my career success stung, but I stayed focused. "How are you and Mom doing financially? Since I stopped covering your bills?" There was a long pause. "We're managing. It's tight, but we'll figure it out." After hanging up, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I checked their credit reports. As a financial advisor, I had access to financial databases, and while it wasn't strictly ethical to use them for personal reasons, I needed to understand the full picture. What I found shocked me. They had missed payments on 2 credit cards and their home equity line of credit. Their once excellent credit scores had already dropped significantly. Without my monthly infusions of cash, they were indeed struggling not because they didn't have money, but because they had been funneling so much to Jason that they had created a lifestyle dependent on my contributions. The next day, I received a panicked call from my mother. "Robbie, the bank called about the mortgage again. We need that money. You can't just leave us hanging like this." "Mom, what happened to your savings account? The one with over $200,000? Another telling silence. "How do you know about that?" "I saw the statements, Mom. Where did that money go?" "That's none of your business," she said defensively. "That's our retirement fund." "Is it? Or did it go to Jason's latest venture? Or his gambling debt?" "Gambling debt? What are you talking about?" The genuine confusion in her voice made me pause. Did they not know? I decided to back off that topic until I had more information. "Mom, I can't keep supporting you financially when you've been misleading me about your needs and planning to leave everything to Jason. It's not about the inheritance itself, it's about the deception. The exploitation." "We never exploited you," she said, her voice hardening. "You offered to help. We never forced you. You created a false narrative that you were about to lose your home. That's exploitation, Mom." The conversation ended with her hanging up on me, but it confirmed what I had suspected. Without my financial support, my parents were facing genuine financial strain for the first time, and it seemed they might not be fully aware of all of Jason's activities. I needed to dig deeper into Jason's situation. What had happened to all the money my parents had diverted to him? Why was he applying for more loans when he had just purchased an expensive home and supposedly had my parents' financial backing? The answers would come from an unexpected source, one that would change the entire dynamic of this family conflict. The email arrived 3 days later from an address I didn't recognize, amanda.r.wells@gmail.com. The subject line read simply, "About Jason and your parents." I almost deleted it as spam, but decided to open it first. It was from Amanda Wells, Jason's ex-girlfriend. They had dated for almost 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago, around the time he purchased his new house. "Robbie," the email began, "you don't know me well, but I dated your cousin Jason until earlier this year. I've been hearing about the family situation from mutual friends, and there are things you should know. Jason isn't who your parents think he is. I have information that might help you understand what's really been happening. Can we meet in person? I don't feel comfortable putting everything in an email." I was skeptical but intrigued. After confirming her identity through social media and mutual connections, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, a public place where we could talk privately. Amanda arrived right on time. She was in her early 30s, professionally dressed, with a serious demeanor that matched the gravity of our meeting. After ordering coffee, we found a secluded corner table. "Thank you for meeting me," she began. "This isn't easy, but after hearing what's happening with your family, I felt I had to reach out." "What exactly have you heard?" I asked cautiously. "That your parents are disinheriting you in favor of Jason. That they've been taking your money while funding his lifestyle. That they consider him their real son." She shook her head. "It's all part of the manipulation." "What manipulation?" Amanda took a deep breath. "Jason has been deliberately driving a wedge between you and your parents for years. He saw them as his meal ticket, his security net. You were the obstacle." She pulled out her phone and opened a folder of screenshots, text conversations between her and Jason during their relationship. She handed me the phone, and I began scrolling through messages that made my blood run cold. "Your parents are so easy to work," one text from Jason read. "Just tell them how much you need them, how important family is, and they eat it up." Meanwhile, Robbie's off doing her own thing, not giving them the attention they crave. Their insecurity is my opportunity. Another message. "Had dinner with Aunt Lisa and Uncle Tom tonight. Dropped some subtle comments about how Robbie seems too busy with her career to really care about family traditions. They ate it up. They're so desperate to feel needed. And, perhaps most damning, they're changing their will next month. Everything to me, nothing to Robbie. They don't even see how I've been playing them. Too busy feeling sorry for me and my business setbacks. Little do they know those setbacks are funding my actual lifestyle." I looked up at Amanda, stunned. Why are you showing me this? Why now? Her expression softened. Because what he's doing is wrong. I didn't realize the full extent of it until after we broke up. He was always manipulative, but I thought it was just his personality. It wasn't until I caught him lying about some major things that I started piecing everything together. What major things? She hesitated. His gambling. He has a serious problem, Robbie. Those businesses he started? They were never meant to succeed. They were covers to explain the money he was getting from your parents and to launder his occasional gambling winnings. When he loses, which is most of the time, he goes to your parents with another business idea or investment opportunity. This explains so much: the failed businesses, the constant need for more capital, the new house purchased at a time when he should have been broke from his business failures. He owes some dangerous people a lot of money, Amanda continued. That's actually why we broke up. I found threatening texts on his phone. When I confronted him, he admitted he was in debt to loan sharks for over $150,000. I felt physically ill. My parents had no idea they were funding an addiction. They thought they were supporting entrepreneurial efforts, helping their real son build a future. Instead, they were enabling a destructive habit that could potentially put them all in danger. There's more, Amanda said quietly. He talks about your parents' house and assets as if they're already his. He has plans to sell everything once he inherits the family home, the heirlooms, all of it. He's already spoken with realtors about the property's potential value. I sat back, processing this flood of information. Why would my parents be so blind to this? They're not stupid people. Emotional manipulation is powerful, she replied. Jason figured out their insecurities and exploited them masterfully. He made them feel needed, appreciated, respected, all the things he sensed they weren't getting from their relationship with you. Not because you didn't provide those things, but because he actively worked to make them believe you didn't. Do you have any other evidence besides these texts? I asked. While the messages were damning, they might not be enough to convince my parents, who could dismiss them as taken out of context or fabricated. Amanda nodded. I kept a journal during our relationship. I have dates, times, specific conversations where Jason outlined his strategies for manipulating your parents. And I have email exchanges where he discussed his gambling debts and plans for their assets. She promised to compile everything and send it to me securely. As we parted, she touched my arm. Be careful, Robbie. Jason won't take this exposure well. He's invested years in this manipulation. He won't give up his future inheritance without a fight. I drove home in a daze, my mind reeling from these revelations. The situation wasn't just about my parents favoring Jason. It was about active, calculated manipulation by someone exploiting their emotional vulnerabilities for financial gain. The next morning, I received another unexpected call, this one from my maternal grandmother, Eleanor Wright. At 84, she remained sharp as a tack and had always been the family's moral compass. Robbie, she said when I answered, we need to talk about what's happening with your parents. Can you come for lunch today? I agreed immediately. Grandma had always been a stabilizing force in the family, and her perspective would be valuable. When I arrived at her tidy suburban home, she was waiting with a homemade meal and a serious expression. After brief pleasantries, she got straight to the point. Your mother called me, very upset about your falling out. She gave me her version of events, but I'd like to hear yours. I told her everything, the will discovery, the financial deception, the confrontation, and now the revelations about Jason's manipulation and gambling. She listened without interruption, occasionally nodding as if pieces of a puzzle were falling into place for her. When I finished, she sighed deeply. I've suspected something wasn't right for years. The way they elevated Jason while taking you for granted never sat well with me. Why do you think they were so susceptible to this? I asked, the question that had been haunting me. Grandma's eyes took on a distant look. Your mother has always struggled with insecurity. As a child, she constantly sought approval, validation. Your father is similar, needs to be needed, to feel important. When you became independent, successful on your own, they interpreted it as not needing them. But that's not fair, I protested. Shouldn't parents want their children to become independent? In healthy families, yes, she replied. But your mother, there's something you should know. When she was young, She lived in her sister's shadow. Amanda was the pretty one, the popular one, the one everyone noticed. Your mother was the responsible, reliable one who never got the same attention. She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. I think, in some way, she's been jealous of your independence and success. It triggers those old feelings of inadequacy. And Jason, consciously or not, tapped into that vulnerability. He makes her feel important, necessary, validated in a way that your self-sufficiency doesn't. This perspective cast my entire childhood in a new light. My mother's emotional distance, her apparent preference for Jason, it wasn't just about him being more family-oriented. It was about her own unresolved insecurities and jealousies. What should I do, Grandma? I asked. I can't keep financially supporting them, especially knowing where the money is really going. But I also don't want to abandon them to Jason's manipulation. She reached across the table and took my hand. This family needs truth, Robbie. Painful, uncomfortable truth. I think it's time for a real family meeting with me present as a neutral party. Bring your evidence. I'll make sure everyone listens. Grandma had always been respected by everyone in the family. If anyone could facilitate a productive conversation, it was her. I'll help you prepare, she said. And regardless of how they respond, know this. I've always been proud of you. Your independence, your integrity, these are virtues, not flaws. Never let anyone make you feel otherwise. I left her house feeling both apprehensive and hopeful. The path ahead would be difficult, but for the first time I had allies. I had evidence. And most importantly, I had a clearer understanding of the complex emotional dynamics that had shaped my family relationships. The truth would come out, one way or another. Whether my parents could accept it and whether our relationship could survive it remained to be seen. The family meeting was set for Saturday afternoon at my grandmother's house. Neutral territory, with Grandma as mediator. I spent the days leading up to it organizing all my evidence, financial records, text messages, emails, and the information Amanda had provided about Jason's gambling and manipulation. Troy offered to come with me, but I decided this needed to be strictly family. This was about years of dysfunctional patterns and hidden truths that needed to be addressed head-on. I arrived early to help Grandma prepare. She had arranged her living room with chairs in a circle, no one at the head, everyone equal. On a side table, she had placed photographs from throughout the years, family gatherings, holidays, graduations, a visual reminder of what was at stake. Remember, Grandma advised as we heard cars pulling into the driveway, stay calm, stick to facts, and keep the focus on healing, not punishment. My parents arrived first, looking apprehensive. They greeted Grandma warmly, but gave me only stiff nods. Jason arrived 10 minutes late, clearly unhappy about being there. To my surprise, my Aunt Jennifer, my mother's sister and Jason's mother also joined us, having flown in from California at Grandma's request. Once everyone was seated, Grandma took charge. We're here today because this family is fractured, and it's time to heal those fractures. There will be no interrupting, no raised voices, and no leaving until we've addressed the issues at hand. Robbie has information to share, and everyone will listen respectfully. I took a deep breath and began, focusing on maintaining a steady, factual tone. 3 years ago, I began financially supporting Mom and Dad because they told me they were in danger of losing their home. Since then, I've provided over $120,000 in direct support. I distributed copies of bank statements showing my regular transfers, followed by documentation of my parents' actual financial situation, the refinanced mortgage, the secret savings account, the money diverted to Jason. 2 months ago, I discovered by accident that despite accepting this support, you were planning to leave everything to Jason in your will, referring to him as your real son. I looked directly at my parents, whose faces had gone pale. I also discovered that the money I was providing wasn't going toward essential needs, but was being redirected to fund Jason's lifestyle and business ventures. My father started to interrupt, but Grandma held up her hand. Let her finish, Tom. You'll have your turn. I continued, outlining the timeline of deception and the emotional impact of discovering I had been manipulated and exploited by my own parents. Then I moved to the revelations about Jason. What you don't know, I said, looking at my parents, is that the money you've been giving to Jason, both yours and what was diverted from me, hasn't been going to legitimate business ventures. I distributed the evidence Amanda had provided: text messages, emails, and her sworn statement about Jason's gambling addiction and his deliberate manipulation of my parents to drive a wedge between us. The room went completely silent as they read through the documents. Jason's face had turned ashen. My mother let out a small gasp as she read the text where Jason boasted about manipulating their insecurities. "This is all lies," Jason finally sputtered, standing up. "She's making this up because she's jealous. She's always been jealous of our relationship." "Sit down, Jason," Grandma said firmly. "These messages came from your own accounts. Are you claiming they're fabricated?" "She's trying to turn you against me," he insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. My Aunt Jennifer, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Jason, I recognize your texting style. The way you write, the phrases you use. These are your messages." She turned to my parents. "Lisa, Tom, I had no idea this was happening. I knew you were close to Jason, but I never imagined he was exploiting that relationship this way." My mother was silently crying, the papers trembling in her hands. My father sat rigid, his face unreadable. "There's one more thing you should know," I said gently. "Jason is in significant debt to some dangerous people because of his gambling. The loan for his house is already in arrears. The businesses you helped him start were never meant to succeed. They were covers for his gambling activities and ways to explain sudden influxes of cash when he occasionally won." Jason stormed toward the door. "I don't have to listen to these lies. If you leave now..." "Jason, you're confirming everything," Grandma called after him. "Stay and defend yourself if these are truly lies." He hesitated, then yanked the door open and left, slamming it behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. "I didn't want to believe it," my mother finally whispered. "But seeing it all laid out like this, how could we have been so blind?" My father had dropped his head into his hands. "All that money. The money you sent us, Robbie. Our savings." Aunt Jennifer moved to sit beside my mother, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Lisa, we've all been fooled by people we loved. The question is what you do now with the truth." Grandma took control of the conversation again. "Tom, Lisa, I think it's time you acknowledge the harm you've caused Robbie. Not just the financial exploitation, but the years of emotional neglect while you elevated Jason to a position he didn't deserve." My parents looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. My father turned to me, his eyes filled with shame. "We have no excuse," he said quietly. "We were wrong. Deeply, inexcusably wrong. I don't know if you can ever forgive us, but I want you to know that I see it now, all of it. How we took advantage of your generosity. How we failed to value you as our daughter." My mother struggled to speak through her tears. "I've been so unfair to you, Robbie. Jennifer is right, we were blinded. Not just by Jason's manipulation, but by our own issues. I think I've been jealous of your independence, your success, your ability to create a life without needing constant validation." She looked at her sister. "The way I was always jealous of you growing up. I've repeated the same pattern with my own daughter." It was the most honest my mother had ever been with me. The admission struck at the heart of our dysfunctional relationship. For the first time, she was seeing and acknowledging her own role in the family dynamics. "Where do we go from here?" my father asked, looking lost. Grandma spoke up again. "That depends on what everyone wants. Robbie, what do you need to move forward?" I had given this considerable thought. "I need several things. First, acknowledgement and genuine apology for the financial deception and emotional favoritism. Second, a commitment to family therapy to address the underlying issues. Third, a fair will that doesn't exclude me as your daughter. And finally, clear boundaries moving forward, including financial independence on your part. I can't continue to support you financially, especially knowing the money was being misused." My parents nodded, looking humbled. "We also need to address the Jason situation," Aunt Jennifer said. "If he truly has gambling debts to dangerous people, that puts all of you at risk." "I can help with that," I offered. I have connections to gambling addiction specialists and financial advisors who deal with debt consolidation, but he has to want the help. In the hours that followed, we talked more openly and honestly than we had in decades. Painful truths were acknowledged. Tears were shed. By the time we parted, we had a tentative plan for moving forward, not with instant forgiveness and trust, but with cautious steps toward healing and rebuilding. 6 months later, much had changed. My parents had committed fully to weekly family therapy sessions where we were gradually unpacking decades of dysfunctional patterns. They had rewritten their will, dividing their assets equitably between Jason and me, though Jason had remained distant and resistant to help for his gambling addiction. My parents had also taken responsibility for their financial situation, downsizing to a smaller home to eliminate their mortgage entirely. The sale of their house had freed enough equity to pay off their remaining debts and create a modest retirement fund that they now managed responsibly. Most importantly, the emotional dynamics were shifting. My mother had begun individual therapy to address her long-standing insecurities and jealousy issues. My father was learning to express appreciation and validation without needing to feel needed in return. Small gestures showed their genuine efforts to change. My mother had created a photo wall in their new home that equally celebrated my accomplishments alongside family memories. My father had started calling regularly just to check in, not to ask for anything. They were both making sincere efforts to get to know Troy, including him in family gatherings and showing interest in his life and work. As for me, I had found unexpected strength through this ordeal. Standing up for myself had been terrifying but transformative. I no longer sought validation from people unable to give it. I had established healthy boundaries, while remaining open to genuine change and reconciliation. Grandma had become an even more important part of my life. Our weekly lunches a cherished tradition. Aunt Jennifer and I had developed a closer relationship, finding common ground in our experiences with family dynamics. Troy had proposed 3 months after the family meeting, getting down on one knee on the balcony where I had first confided in him about my family's betrayal. "You taught me what courage looks like," he said as he held out the ring. "I want to build a family with you, one based on honesty, respect, and real love." On a crisp autumn evening, sitting in our favorite restaurant celebrating our engagement, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain had been excruciating, the revelations devastating. But through it all, I had discovered an essential truth. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't forgiving others, but being willing to forge a new relationship once people have truly changed. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Just wanted to say I love you. No reason, no requests, just love." Simple words that would have seemed impossible a year ago. A small step in a long journey of healing. I showed Troy the message, and he smiled. "Family is complicated," he said, raising his glass. "Here's to building ours with clear eyes and open hearts." I clinked my glass against his, feeling truly at peace for the first time in years. The inheritance that had started this journey had never really been about money or property. It had been about being valued, being seen, being truly accepted as a daughter, not just a financial resource. In the end, I had gained something far more valuable than any material inheritance: self-respect, authentic relationships, and the knowledge that I was strong enough to stand up for my worth, even against those I loved most. What would you do if you discovered your family had been exploiting you financially while planning to exclude you from their inheritance? Would you confront them directly, or take a more strategic approach like Robbie did? Comment below with your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message about setting boundaries and standing up for yourself. Thank you for listening, and I hope this story reminds you that you deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide.